All right, what's going on, fellas? We are headed out to the gym for another deadlift day in our road to 880 deadlift. We're going to see how this one goes. As seems to be the intro to every one of these, I popped my rib a little bit doing some sandbag to shoulder. Part of that's I only have one sandbag right now, so it starts at like 308 pounds. I do some general warm-ups, but I haven't been doing that much in terms of like laterally bending. I haven't been doing that much like asymmetrical training. My rib didn't like it very much. Generally speaking, really broadly, I'm not a physical therapist. I'm a dumb guy on the internet. But ribs, I don't worry about too much. They tend to be uncomfortable, but I don't feel like I've got this elevated risk of something going really awry if I train through it. You know, if I hurt my knee and I'm really stubborn and I try to squat heavy through it, I feel like I've got an elevated risk of like a big, significant knee injury. Whereas with the rib, it's kind of an inconvenience. Used to happen every now and then. Boxing, it's happened every now and then with lifting, especially if the belt kind of gets you in a weird spot. So historically, I've been served well just trying to train through it. We're going to see how that goes today. Going to try to do some heavy deadlifts. I think my weight for my top set is 640 pounds. Dropped back after last week, ramping across 3 weeks to exceed last week's weight. Looking forward to it. We're building back up the food again. After being sick last week, appetite took a hit, dialed back the food a little bit, and then we're re-ramping up the carbs to let my appetite kind of come back. I think effective dieting, just like training, has ebbs and flows and some amount of periodization to it, which sounds really fancy and abstract, and it's hard to keep up with, there's all these moving parts, but it doesn't need to be like that complex. You could phrase it like in a self-aggrandizing bullshit way where you're like, my diet's periodized, or like parts of the year I eat a little bit more carbs, parts of the year I eat a little bit less carbs. It doesn't always need to be these big grandiose like scientific words. I think we can get the same practical effect out of some basic stuff about like sometimes lift light for a lot of reps and then sometimes lift heavy for less reps, right? That is periodization. Sometimes you can make it pretty far off of this more like, I don't know, surface level understanding of something. And even that's kind of bullshit because it's like, I don't know. I know a lot of people that use like the scientific jargon for a lot of things within their training that I would say certainly don't have any more than a surface level understanding of it. They just happen to know the jargon and they insist on using it, talking to people at the gym that don't know it, which is always super douchey to me when people use like anatomical terms to people that don't know what they are to try to come off as smart. It's like if you were smart, you could probably communicate this in a way that the person you're talking to actually understands. But I digress. That's a little pet peeve of mine. But yeah, we're progressing the diet. We're progressing the food intake alongside the weights. As the weights get heavier, the food intake comes up. All right, we've arrived at the gym. About to head in there. Just a couple of things off the top of my head. One, a company was so kind as to send Max some pre-workout to try. Unfortunately for them, Max doesn't really like pre-workout in general, so I have inherited the little bucket. So that's my first time having like pre-workout that's like pre-mixed in a long time. I think when I first started lifting, I went to a grocery outlet and I bought some like bunk flavor of like C4, a little tub of C4. And because I was like, that's what you do. Lifters have pre-workout. I got to get pre-workout. And I had no money at the time. But there was a grocery outlet in the Central District in Seattle that I knew had pre-workout in the corner. So I dropped like $15 for like the world's worst flavor of C4. And then I took it to go walk to the gym because I didn't have a car back then. I would always walk. I was walking to the gym and the beta-alanine kicked in and I had no idea what was happening. I thought I was having an allergic reaction to the pre-workout. But we're back into the pre-workout game, boys. Historically, I've always just had, I just buy bulk supplements, caffeine pills, because 200 milligrams of caffeine is exactly what I'm looking for. I don't really need any of that other stuff. And I prefer to save money wherever I can. So like a salt pill and a caffeine pill is usually what I have for pre-workout. But right now we're taking supplements, boys. We're endorsed kind of through my brother. So that's cool. Another company a long time ago reached out to send Max some smelling salts. Max doesn't use smelling salts. I was like, oh, you should have taken it and just given it to me. I get my supplements secondhand from Max. Aside from that, we're on a huge Ramstein kick right now. It's like all I've been listening to in the gym. We're mixing it up a little bit. And then I heard you guys loud and clear. most liked thing on that thing I put up saying what videos you want to see was just do another large lads, which I'm going to continue making an effort to do those every week. But yell at Max, not me. I'm always ready. I got the setup and everything. Every Sunday, I'm ready to go, and Max is either asleep or gone because he's a punk. So you guys need to get at him. Yell at him on his Instagram if you want to see more large lads, because I'm always ready to go. And you could tell him, and he knows I'm always ready to go. You know, our semi-regular appearing guest, me, ready to go. The host is the problem, Max. Aside from that, you guys wanted to see like some programming breakdowns. I got a couple of guys I could show you. Like, we could talk about what they're doing. We could talk about what I'm doing. We could talk about what Max is doing. Somebody said like a form breakdown of why Max lifts with the techniques he lifts with, what worked, what didn't work. I think that could be a fun one to do at some point. If I was a little bit better with a computer, I could like pull up on screen and like draw on the screen or something, or like replay stuff and have my face in the corner. Not quite sure how to do that stuff, but eventually that will be added to the repertoire. But yeah, I think I said I would make the most liked one, even if it wasn't my cup of tea. So we can go over some people's programming at some point here soon. Right, I have returned for a day after voiceover. I was actually going to voice it over with like the session fresh in my head when I got back from this session. But then I saw Paris's story that he was going to try to beat me to doing the dumbbell bench video. So I headed straight out to my garage, change of plans. So that bumps this training sessions commentary to the next day. So I'm continuing this trend of doing 3-week waves. Last week was the heaviest of this wave, this week being the lightest of the following wave. So the work weight for the day was, it was ascending fives after 5 plates up to, I believe 650. I kind of wanted 6, but that being said, it would be an improvement from this part of the wave last go round if I just did 5. Obviously, based on that 712.5 last week for 4, you'd think, okay, well, tons of reps are there. But the structure of the program is a little bit different. So early on my squat session, when I'm doing a really heavy deadlift on that 3rd week, I do speed pulls, just light for technique to make sure I come in as fresh and strong and technical as I can for that heavy deadlift day. But for the rest of the wave, the other 2 weeks, I'm doing difficult sets of stiff leg deadlifts from the floor after the deadlift. So a little bit more pre-fatigued on this session and also taking 5s up. So basically, we got to compare apples to apples and look to that last first week of the wave where I ended with 635 for 5. So 650 for 5, nice improvement. Just making sure that like, yeah, once you're past a certain point, context matters. PRs for a secondary day, lots of the time people are like, oh, that sounds like a cope. It becomes necessary to compare apples to apples to see if we're making good kind of week to week, month to month progression. We want to go apples to apples. We can't always compare everything to all-time PRs because there's going to be contexts where in our training we should be pre-fatigued. So honestly, I was pretty, at first I was like, I wanted 6. That would have been cooler, blah, blah, blah. But like, you know, cooler heads prevail. And I was like, okay, yeah, 5, not bad. I was definitely feeling my rib a little bit, but it was pretty easy to work through. Just felt uncomfortable in my start position. And then also, wow, I really underestimated the fatigue from those stiff legs earlier this week. Not that it's a problem. I hit my numbers. And I'm glad I'm kind of getting in more of that pure hinging work because I do drop my hips down into my squat more than a lot of people. So with my primary variation, I like to use something that the main lift misses. So as someone who drops his hips a little bit lower, that bigger stretch on the hamstrings, more pure hinge pattern is something I really want to pick up with my assistance work that might be missed with my primary technique. So between the rib and the bit of pre-fatigue, my positioning was a little off, but a lot of the time, like people will, I saw a post a while ago, I have no idea who it was from, so I'm plagiarizing a little bit here, but it wasn't my idea. They said, hey, training under fatigue conditions often feels like repeated misgrooves. And I was like, that's really true. I never really thought about that. But a lot of the time when I'm like, oh man, I'm misgrooving, it's just that I'm training under pre-fatigued conditions. And then when I decay that fatigue and come into a session where I'm supposed to be fresh, suddenly everything is clicking. Everything feels good. So it wasn't that I'm just that unskilled at it. I'm missing my bar path over and over. It's that when I'm pre-fatigued, I really have to fight to keep that bar path, which is, to me, what makes training under fatigue so potent. That is what makes us more skillful. So if we're like coming into a session pre-fatigued and we're really having to fight this breakdown, we're having to find our positions and we're having to really think to find them because we're fatigued, we feel like we're misgrooving. Then when we are in a fresh kind of unfatigued state, we're able to really execute with a very fine, nice margin of error. So, like, kind of context considered in the pre-fatigue, I was like, man, these pulls don't feel perfect, but that's very much understandable because I am training under fatigue. That is how that's going to feel. I'm not going to panic and be like, I forgot how to deadlift. The reason my deadlift feels less consistent is because I'm fatigued here. My job is to do the best I can. Now, I wasn't quite happy with my technique. I could have locked in my mid-back in a better way. There's definitely things I could have done better, and I definitely rushed the pulls a little bit, and that's on me. I was just trying to get out of the start position because my rib hurt. I probably should have just sucked it up and been deliberate because I don't get the opportunity to do a million deadlift sets per week as some athletes do. So I really, really do have to take pride in the work that I do. Needs to be very high quality. There isn't quantity to make up for it. So I guess in the session, I contextualize it well. I'm like, all right, 5, just look back 3 weeks ago, apples to apples, this same kind of setup under similar conditions, up 15 pounds, same reps. Definitely room for improvement next week on the form where I'm taking ascending 3s, so a little bit less pre-fatigue, but I will still have some fatigue from the stiff legs. But I am very, very optimistic about this kind of 3-week wave ending with something comparable or better than that last one. And I suspect I'm actually already in decent condition. Next week, the bottom of my 3-week wave will be 300 kilos. So I will not be dipping below 300 kilos unless I really need a reactive deload from like a bad overaccumulation of fatigue. I won't be dipping below 300 kilos for work weight for quite some time. So, and those upper end sets of like that set of 4 was an all-time PR. I'm already getting in pretty good shape. I don't want to jump the gun, and I don't think it's going to be as extreme as the bench press where I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm in good shape way quicker than I expected. Change of plans, we're heading straight for it. I don't expect that, but I got to all-time-ish strength faster than expected. So again, I'm very optimistic. Maybe I have underestimated myself a little bit in my propensity to be able to get this deadlift up as well. Really looking forward to the coming weeks of training. I've got a show coming up, so I'll be a little bit more tired than usual for my deadlift training because I'm going to train through. I'm still going to work on the 880, but I got events to hit every week, so I will be a little bit more fatigued, so my numbers might be a little slower. But I do feel confident in my ability to prep for this show, but also continue pushing forward on the deadlift and not put that on the back burner.